People think marrying into money is like winning the lottery, but the truth, it's more like stepping onto a stage where every spotlight is pointed at you, and the audience is waiting for you to fail. My name is Elena Ramirez. I was 29 years old when I married Nathaniel Whitmore. To most people, that name meant wealth, power, and prestige. The Whitmores weren't just rich, they were American aristocracy. Old money, the kind of family whose last name could open any door, silence any doubt. But for me, that name would become a cage. Because when I became Elena Whitmore, I didn't just marry a man. I married into a dynasty, and dynasties do not welcome outsiders. The first time I walked into their mansion, I thought I was dreaming. A sprawling estate in the Hamptons with marble floors that gleamed like water, crystal chandeliers that sparkled like stars, art on the walls that probably cost more than my entire college education. And waiting for me at the top of the staircase was Margaret Whitmore, my new mother-in-law. She was elegance carved in stone, perfect posture, pearl earrings, a smile that never reached her eyes. "Elena," she said, kissing the air beside my cheek. "Welcome to the family." But in that moment, with her eyes scanning me from head to toe, I didn't feel welcomed. I felt inspected. That night they held a family dinner in my honor. The dining hall was long and gleaming with a table that could seat 20. There were only 6 of us, but Margaret sat at the head as though she were presiding over a kingdom. To her right was Robert Whitmore, my father-in-law. He was tall, broad, his hair graying at the temples, his expression unreadable. He barely glanced at me the whole evening. Beside me sat Carolyn, Nate's younger sister. She had the Whitmore features, delicate, polished, perfect, but her smile was sharp. Halfway through dinner, Margaret turned to me. "Elena, dear," she said sweetly, "remind me again. Your mother, she runs a cleaning business, doesn't she?" I nodded. Yes, she built it herself. Margaret's lips curled in approval, but her eyes told another story. "How admirable," she said, "so much grit. So, American dream." Carolyn let out a soft laugh, setting down her wine glass. "That's cute," she said. "So you really are a success story." Nate squeezed my hand under the table, giving me a look that said ignore them. So I smiled. I lifted my glass and played along, but inside a voice whispered, "They will never see you as one of them." The weeks that followed were tests I never signed up for. Every dinner was another opportunity to remind me that I didn't belong. Margaret would ask about my parents, her questions wrapped in silk but edged with steel. Carolyn would make jokes about queens, about public schools, about people who don't know which fork to use. I became an actress in my own life, smiling, nodding, pretending their barbs didn't cut. Nate would kiss my forehead at night and whisper, "Give them time, Elena, they'll come around," but deep down I knew better. Blood doesn't change, and I wasn't their blood. One night, a storm rattled the windows of the Whitmore estate. I couldn't sleep. I wandered into Robert's study, a grand room filled with leather-bound books and the smell of cigar smoke. I was searching for something to read, running my fingers along the spines of untouched novels when I noticed a drawer that wasn't fully closed. Curiosity got the better of me. I pulled it open. Inside was a file. Thick, heavy. I shouldn't have looked, but I did. Page after page of documents. Bank statements, wire transfers, shell companies I'd never heard of. Offshore accounts in the Cayman Islands, and names, politicians, judges, men whose faces I'd seen on TV. The Whitmores weren't just rich, they were criminals. Their entire empire was built on secrets buried under money and influence. My hands shook as I flipped through the pages. My pulse thundered in my ears. It was enough to destroy them, to expose them, to end everything. For a moment I thought about taking it. About running, about burning their kingdom down before it could swallow me whole. But then I heard footsteps in the hallway. My heart stopped. Quickly, I slid the file back into the drawer, closed it, and forced myself to breathe. By the time the footsteps faded, my mind was spinning. I should have walked away that night, but I didn't. I stayed, and by the time I realized my mistake, I was already trapped. People say families are built on love. The Whitmores taught me families are built on loyalty, and loyalty to them was never given, it was tested. Every day Margaret tested me, and every day I failed, not because I didn't try, but because no matter how much I smiled, no matter how carefully I spoke, no matter how hard I worked to be the perfect wife, I wasn't what she wanted. I wasn't her. It started with whispers. Carolyn, Nate's sister, would make comments at brunch, little digs. "Elena, that dress is brave. Did you pick it out yourself?" Or, Elena, you're so lucky Nate doesn't care about pedigree. Most men in our circle wouldn't be so open-minded. Each word was sugar-coated poison and Nate would laugh it off. Don't take it seriously, he'd whisper in my ear. That's just Carolyn being Carolyn, but Carolyn was only the knife. Margaret was the hand that drove it deeper. One evening, after another suffocating dinner, Margaret asked to speak with me alone. She poured herself a glass of red wine and sat across from me in the parlor, her pearls gleaming against her black dress. Elena, she said, her voice smooth as silk, you're a beautiful girl. Intelligent, ambitious. But you must understand something, families like ours don't just accept anyone. I stiffened. I am your son's wife. Her smile was razor sharp. Yes, but wives can be replaced. I felt the blood drain from my face. You don't belong here, she said softly. And the longer you cling to this family, the more it will hurt you and him. Her meaning was clear. Leave or be destroyed, but I loved Nate. I still believed in him, so I stayed, and in staying I sealed my fate. The betrayal came on a Tuesday morning. I woke to the sound of fists pounding on the door. Before I could understand what was happening, our penthouse was flooded with men in dark suits, their voices booming. FBI, open up. Within seconds, agents stormed inside. Papers were ripped from drawers, laptops confiscated, every corner of my home turned upside down. And then one of them held up a folder. Elena Whitmore, you are under arrest for insider trading. I laughed, hysterical, desperate. What? That's insane. I've never before I could finish, cold steel handcuffs snapped around my wrists. And that's when I saw her, Margaret, standing in the corner of the living room, calm, composed, a faint smile playing on her lips, like a queen watching a traitor dragged to the gallows. Nate, I screamed, twisting toward him. Tell them, you know I didn't do this. My husband, my golden boy, stood frozen by the window, his face pale, his mother's hand resting lightly on his arm. Nate, please, but he wouldn't look at me. His voice was a whisper, but it cut through me like a blade. I don't know what to believe anymore, Elena. The room tilted, the air vanished from my lungs. That was the moment I knew he had chosen them, not me, them. The press was waiting outside as they dragged me away in handcuffs. Cameras flashed, reporters shouted questions. Mrs. Whitmore, did you use insider information to enrich yourself? Did you marry Nathaniel Whitmore for money? Are you a fraud, Elena? By nightfall, my face was everywhere. Headlines screamed, gold digger wife caught in scandal. Talk shows dissected my past, twisting my mother's cleaning business into a punchline. The Whitmores said nothing, they didn't need to. Their silence was my execution. I spent that night in a cold interrogation room, my wrists bruised from the cuffs. The agents asked their questions, showed me documents, bank records, evidence that had been planted so carefully it almost convinced me I was guilty. When they finally released me on bail, I went back to the penthouse. My home, but the locks had already been changed. Nate was waiting outside with Margaret. He couldn't even meet my eyes. It's better this way, he murmured, and Margaret, she didn't speak. She didn't have to. Her smile said it all. I wasn't a wife, I was an infection, and they had cut me out. The world I thought I had built crumbled overnight. Every friend disappeared, every door closed. Every job application was rejected the second they saw my name. I went back to Queens, to my mother's tiny apartment above the laundromat. The same place I had sworn I would never return to. I lay awake that first night, listening to the hum of the dryers below, staring at the ceiling. They had taken everything from me. My husband, my reputation, my future. But as I lay there in the dark, humiliated and broken, something sparked inside me. Rage. And rage is a seed. Given enough time, it grows roots. The Whitmores thought they had destroyed me, but what they didn't realize was that in trying to erase me, they had created something far more dangerous, and I was just getting started.
Exile isn't just being cast out. It's being forgotten. The Whitmores didn't just strip me of their name. They made sure the world saw me as nothing more than a fraud. The headlines mocked me. Strangers whispered when I walked past. Friends stopped answering my calls. And so I went back to the only place left for me. Queens. To my mother's small apartment above the laundromat. The same place I swore I would never return to. I thought I had outgrown that world. But now it was all I had left. My mother, Lucia, welcomed me with open arms. Her hands, calloused from years of scrubbing other people's floors, held me as if I were still a child. She didn't ask questions. She didn't need to. She knew pain when she saw it. For weeks, I barely left the apartment. The world outside was poison. Reporters camped outside, waiting for a glimpse of the disgraced Whitmore wife. Children from the neighborhood pointed and whispered. Even the local grocery store clerk looked at me differently, like I was contagious. At night, I lay awake listening to the hum of the dryers downstairs, and I wondered if maybe Margaret had been right all along. Maybe I didn't belong. But then, in the darkness, I would hear my mother moving quietly in the kitchen, preparing meals for the next day, ironing uniforms for the women she employed. She had nothing. And yet she had built something from that nothing. And I thought, if she could, so could I. I started small. Freelance work. Consulting jobs that no one wanted. I worked late into the night, my laptop balanced on the same kitchen table I had done my high school homework on. People laughed at me. The Whitmore scandal followed me everywhere. But slowly, I began to build. One client turned into 3. 3 into 10. And then one of my proposals caught the eye of an investor. Within a year, I had launched a startup, small, fragile, but alive. A piece of me, separate from the Whitmores, fueled not by their wealth but by my determination. By year 2, that startup wasn't small anymore. We had contracts. Employees. Offices in Silicon Valley. The world stopped seeing me as the disgraced Whitmore wife. They began to see me as something else. Elena Ramirez. CEO. Builder. Survivor. But while I rebuilt my life, I never forgot what they did to me. Every night, before I shut down my laptop, I would think of Margaret's smile as I was dragged away in handcuffs. Of Nate's silence. Of Caroline's laughter when she called me a fraud. And I promised myself, one day, I would return. Not to beg for forgiveness. Not to reclaim a seat at their table. No. I would return to flip the table over. And when I did, I would make sure they felt what I felt. Humiliation. Isolation. Exile. I wasn't just going to survive them. I was going to destroy them. I began collecting pieces of their world. Remember that file I once found in Robert's study? I couldn't forget it. So I hired investigators. I made contacts. I spoke to people they had cast aside, the ones who knew their secrets but were too afraid to speak. And slowly, I began to build a weapon. Not of bullets or knives, but of truth. Every bribe. Every shell company. Every offshore account. I had it all. And as my company grew, so did my reach. The Whitmores thought I was gone. They thought I was erased. But really, I was only sharpening my claws. One night, I sat across from my mother in the kitchen. She looked at me with worry in her eyes. "Mija," she said softly, "I see the way you look at the world now. Like every face is an enemy. Don't let them take your heart." I smiled at her. But deep down, I knew the truth. The Whitmores had already taken my heart. All I had left was fire. And I was ready to burn. The Whitmores thought exile would bury me. But exile only made me stronger. And now, it was time to come home. The return. People say revenge is sweet. They're wrong. Revenge is bitter. It burns the throat, it scars the tongue. But when you've been starved long enough, bitterness tastes like survival. And I had starved for years. While the Whitmores dined in marble halls and posed for magazines, I built my empire brick by brick. And now, I was ready to burn theirs down. The perfect stage came, as I knew it would. Every spring, the Whitmores hosted their charity gala. It was their annual display of power. Manhattan's elite gathered under chandeliers, sipping champagne, praising Margaret Whitmore as the queen of philanthropy. That year, they raised money for children's education. The irony was almost poetic, considering how many children their greed had robbed of futures. I watched the invitations circulate online. I saw the guest list, the sponsors, the reporters who would be there. And I knew, this would be the night the world saw the Whitmores for who they really were. The evening of the gala, I dressed in black. A dress as sharp as armor, heels that clicked like gunfire against the marble floors. I hadn't been seen in their circles for nearly a decade. To them, I was a ghost. And that was exactly what I wanted to be. When I entered the ballroom, heads turned. Glasses froze midair. Whispers rippled through the crowd. Is that her? It can't be. She's back? I could feel Margaret's eyes on me from across the room. Cold. Calculating. But for the first time, not in control. She was at the podium, delivering her speech, basking in the applause. Our family has always believed in giving back. The words were still rolling off her tongue when the first phone buzzed. Then another. Then another. Screens lit up around the room. Reporters gasped. Guests stared at breaking headlines that were hitting the internet in real time. Whitmore family under federal investigation. Bribery, fraud, tax evasion, documents leak exposes elite family. I had released everything. Every shell company. Every offshore account, every bribe, every lie, every secret they thought was buried. The ballroom turned into chaos. Guests whispered, cameras flashed, phones rang off the hook. And Margaret froze. I walked toward the stage. Slowly. Purposefully. Her face drained of color as I climbed the steps. For once, she looked small. You, she whispered, her voice trembling. I smiled. Calm. Cold. Me. The daughter of a cleaning lady. The woman you tried to erase. She tried to recover, tried to summon that icy composure. You think this will destroy us? We are Whitmores. We survive. I leaned close, so only she could hear. No. You end tonight. Star. The cameras were everywhere, reporters snapping photos of Margaret's panic, of Nate stumbling to defend his family, of Caroline fleeing the stage in tears. And me? Standing tall and black, like the ghost of every secret they had buried. The FBI arrived within the hour. Agents stormed into the gala, the same way they had once stormed into my home. But this time, it wasn't me in handcuffs. It was them. I walked toward the stage. Slowly. Purposefully. Her face drained of color as I climbed the steps. For once, she looked small. You, she whispered, her voice trembling. I smiled. Calm. Cold. Me. The daughter of a cleaning lady. The woman you tried to erase. She tried to recover, tried to summon that icy composure. You think this will destroy us? We are Whitmores. We survive. I leaned close, so only she could hear. No. You end tonight. Star. The cameras were everywhere, reporters snapping photos of Margaret's panic, of Nate stumbling to defend his family, of Caroline fleeing the stage in tears. And me? Standing tall and black, like the ghost of every secret they had buried. The FBI arrived within the hour. Agents stormed into the gala, the same way they had once stormed into my home. But this time, it wasn't me in handcuffs. It was them. The cameras were everywhere. Reporters snapping photos of Margaret's panic, of Nate stumbling to defend his family, of Caroline fleeing the stage in tears. And me? Standing tall and black, like the ghost of every secret they had buried. The FBI arrived within the hour. Agents stormed into the gala, the same way they had once stormed into my home. But this time, it wasn't me in handcuffs. It was them. Nate caught my eye as they dragged him away. His face was pale, his perfect suit crumpled, his lips trembling. Elena, please. For a moment, I saw the man I had once loved. The man I thought would protect me. But that man had died the day he chose silence. So I looked at him with nothing but steel in my voice. Now you know what it feels like. And then I turned away. As I walked out of the ballroom, the chaos behind me faded. The cameras, the shouting, the downfall of an empire, it all blurred into nothing. Outside, the night was quiet. The city lights glowed against the Hudson, and for the first time in years, I could breathe. I wasn't a victim anymore. I wasn't the disgraced Whitmore wife. I wasn't even a survivor. I was something else. The architect of their destruction. And in their ruins, I had finally built my throne. The Whitmores taught me one lesson: in their world, power is everything. And now, all of it belongs to me. Thank you for listening to my story. If you have been in similar situation before or know someone who does, subscribe and click the notification button for more invigorating stories like this one.